afterwards, as well as the slideshow to provide you with any further information. And of course, if anything happens, I am open to any conversations directly by phone or by email, and we'll make sure you have all of that info. I think during the time when I am doing the presentation, if we just have everybody on mute, I know we're all at our homes, thank goodness. We all have some safe spaces to be at. So just click mute, and that way we can keep our home life a little bit quiet in the background so that everybody can hear. So thanks, thank you for that. Okay, so let me just, as many of you, I'm sure, we're just learning all these new online technologies. I'm going to just switch now to share my screen so that I can take you through our story, the story of Project Home. Share, and it's going to be on the outside. Here we go. You may need to switch. Can you go back? Nope. Okay, this is part of that challenge, right? Even though you test drive constantly, we're going to just unshare for a second, right? I'm not sharing now. And here we go, we're almost there. Okay, good, excellent. I have it now. I'm gonna share it with you. Here we go. There, hopefully everybody can see it. And then we'll go to enter full. Great, okay. So this is the picture of the front of our building, which I miss so much, of Artscape Young Place. It is an older building, around 100 years old, and it is an incredible place of culture making, and we are one of the largest tenants in this building. It's just over 75,000 square feet, and Sketch houses just under 9,000 square feet. It has many different artists in it, and we are the only organization in there, not only being the largest tenant, but we're the only organization that is working specifically in this with this population. We've been around about 23 years, well, actually almost 24 years now, and we work with street-involved, homeless, marginalized young people between the ages of 16 to 29. We believe strongly in the transformation of the arts and the power of that kind of communication and engagement, and how we can meet people where they're at as young people who are dealing with systemic barriers every single day. We provide a space, and because we believe that creativity starts with space. No matter where you're at or what it is that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, we want to provide, and we do provide, this space as a place where people can come, get a healthy meal, begin to engage with people, and start to understand themselves and their identity in a whole different way. So space is critical for this to happen. Now, we've been around for 23 years. So over those years, and we have seen many changes. One of those changes has been, we started with a 900 square foot space in Queen West, and we had about 6 participants that came every day. The space was small, it was a storefront, but it was amazing to begin to look at how do the arts work with, particularly with this population, to start to shift and change lives. When that was taken back by the landlord, we had to move. So we moved to King in Portland. And in that time was around 2002. Things were very different at King in Portland, but we ended up at the end of that time, it was about 10 years. We had 625 young people in our space. It was fantastic. And we learned a lot by spending that time and really engaging with young people and figuring out what the framework looked like. And then at the end of that, of course, by the end of that 10 years, our rent had doubled. So it became too expensive for us to be there. So we found ourselves once again having to move. Now, of course, every time you move, you have to change everything. You have to restructure, figure out where you can afford to be, how you can afford to run your programs. So at that time, we ended up moving to a smaller space as a temporary venue while we were waiting at that time to move into Artscape Young Place. They were still doing their construction. you could see right away that we had to move our programs out into the community, into different community hubs, and our numbers really dropped at that time. So not having our own space and a place to really be able to welcome and gather and build momentum meant that the numbers were going to drop. So we moved to now where we are now, and we moved to where 180 Shaw Street, and in 2019 we saw an incredible boost of well, actually since we've moved there, the numbers have been increasing every year. So we have over 1,000 young people currently using our spaces. That includes 517 new participants and just under $8,000 8,000 individual visits. So this really affirmed for us that having a space meant, and especially one that was equipped, this meant that we could really build on the momentum of what individuals were learning and identifying as young people. And we saw a real framework of programming coming together that could lead people from being totally homeless and a whole bunch of barriers to becoming actual leaders and program facilitators, even within our own programs. So today we have a multidiscipline studio space that includes everything. When people say, Sketch works with the arts, it's way beyond just visual arts. We do silk screening, performance, media arts, whether that's digital media, photography, movement, spoken word. We have industrial arts, and we have ceramics and pottery. We have an engineering booth, so we do engineering, production, music, music recording, music performance, and we have a fully outfitted culinary community kitchen where we use the culinary arts as a way of engaging young people. And then, of course, visual arts is also very strong. And part of that is also then developing and producing work that then young people can sell at different markets that we provide, both internally at our own marketplaces, but then we connect them externally to be able to sell their works out in the community. So this space is providing us a real spectrum of opportunity to not only begin to welcome people who come in with a different sense of who they are in storytelling, and we don't need to know a lot about them, to all the way to leading and facilitating program, producing work, and so on. So space is becoming very important. The other aspect of that is the people. So the individuals that work on our team are all highly skilled individuals who are providing direct mentorship and wraparound services for folks. So really important to have the space for us to be able to continue to grow and develop. But we have challenges. Like all of us, we in the last while, we certainly have seen, and over 23 years, certainly seen ups and downs of this, but, lots of cuts to funding for youth. The other part is the really critical issue of real estate rising costs, especially in the last while. Rental costs are just getting very expensive. Many of our partners have had to leave their spaces because they can no longer pay the rent. So we had an opportunity come to us, or an offer from Artscape to say, would you be interested in buying your spaces? And so we began to try and figure out who could we gather. And so we gathered some folks to help us start to really think about how we could do this. And so we have an advisory group that we've been working with for the last year and a half to develop a campaign, Project Home, capital campaign, which is just a $4 million project. And that enables us to buy both the admin hub and our lower level studios. We would be the first one in that building to actually, as an organization, make the purchase. And that would, we believe, and from our feasibility study, demonstrates that would allow us to become more stable as an organization. The challenge is always when you are not a huge charity. We are a mid-sized charity. How do we stabilize our own stabilize our costs so that we know more and more funding can go towards programming? If we don't do that, what we looked at was the rental costs for us over the years, as you can see, continue to increase. A couple of reasons for that. One is that we started, when we moved into the space, we started with a subsidy on our rent, on our square footage. That is going to end in the next 5 years. So regardless, in the next 5 years, our subsidy costs will end and we will be more in the market rate level. Well, that will itself increase the rent exponentially. And so we knew that if we could purchase it, however, and manage a way of buying the space, that would stabilize the costs. So at one juncture, at some point, we're going to have to relocate. And what does that mean? It means losing the investment that we already have in the space. It means having to put a lot of resources and energy into resetting the programming and, you know, moving everyone. So it just was a logical thing to figure out, if we can do this, how can we do it? Because it made sense. And we consulted with many, many people, and everyone agreed that this made sense. How are we going to do it is really the question. So we came up with a financial framework that was allowing us to go on this journey with folks. And the way that it ended up breaking down was 3 ways. One is to have a mortgage, approved mortgage of 1.1 million, and to close that mortgage, so we know what that cost is going to be. That we launch a fundraising campaign of 1.52, and then this piece that we were going to focus on today, that we are focusing, is the community bonds. And with the community bonds, we determined that we could support 1.4 million in community bonds. So we're inviting everyone now. We're just at the launch, and just as life changed for everybody, we were at the beginning of our launch publicly to say, come and join us, be part of this, for many, many different reasons. One reason is that it's an opportunity to invest locally, invest in a space that means the difference between this 1,000 young people having a place to come, or 1,000 people losing the space that they would normally come to. So we wanted to invite people, and how could we do that, that everyone could feel a part of it? So how it's working for us is that we're looking at creating, or we have created, sorry, a menu of bonds. And the way that the bonds work is that you would invest some money with Sketch and say, here, you have this amount of money for this period of time. Your investment then becomes our capital. It helps us to make the purchase of the space from Artscape. And then you receive, in return though, you would receive the interest on that investment annually until the bond is up, its period is up, and then you would receive the capital back, the initial capital. So if you gave us $10 a year, you would get a percentage on the $10, and then we give you the $10 back at the end of 3 or 5, 7 years. So this is the structure we were looking at for a total of $1.4 million in bonds. The 2 that I wanted to focus on, or that we want to focus on with these sessions, are specifically for the community. So one is a bond which we're really excited about. It's called the Canada's First Giving Bond. And so it's been done in other countries, but never done in Canada. And what that is that we've set the bond at a minimum investment of $10,000. The years of maturity would be for 5 years. So you would give us $10,000 for 5 years. The interest rate on that would be 4%, and you would get the interest annually on that. And the giving bond is unique because what you would do then is then donate the interest back to Sketch. And at the end of that 5 years, we would give you back the $10,000 capital. So if people are in a position where they can loan, basically an interest-free loan, give it to us for 5 years, we are able to use that to buy the space. We give you the interest payment. You give us back to us as a donation, and you get a donation receipt on your taxes every year. So that's a very unique and a kind of exciting opportunity to invest in the organization, receive your charitable receipt for your taxes, but then also know that you can get the interest back, your capital back at the end of 5 years. Or people might end up at some point then deciding to donate a portion of that or the whole thing at that point, if their situation allows. So lots of flexibility in that bond. The other bond is the D bond. The reason we created this bond is because Sketch has a lot of folks who support us. We don't necessarily have a really large body of people who would be major donors, but can afford to give us something. And maybe you can't give it. You can give it for a period of time because you can't totally donate it. So this bond is just accessible to many people who might be able to give at a different level. So one bond minimum investment is $1,000. For that, you would receive 3% return over 3 years. And at the end of the 3 years, again, you would get the $1,000 back. This one is really focusing on our donors and the community and friends and people who want to put their money somewhere. As you can see, both these bonds have really incredible interest rates, right? Especially compared to now. Right now in Canada, the Bank of Canada, comparatively on the A bond, you would give it to the Bank of Canada for 5 years and the interest rate would be 1.25. We're looking at 5 years at 4%. So already it's a much better prospect and makes a bigger investment, because the Canada bonds, you don't know necessarily where the investment's going. With our bond, you know it's an impact investment. Same with the $1,000 for 3 years. Bank of Canada is 1.75. Ours is 3%, and you are giving money to help Sketch keep a space. So that's the impact part. You are making a huge difference and giving us incredible resources to be able to secure this space moving forward. The other two bonds that we have that we're not necessarily focusing on today, but to give you a sense of the full menu for organizations looking at this, is that we have a B and a C series bond as well. These bonds are more focused on corporate level or people maybe with higher net worth. So we have the B bond, which is $25,000 minimum investment. You give it for 7 years, so you're giving it to us a bit longer, so you get 4.5%. So people who might have $25,000 that they can invest for 7 years, and they would get 4.5% on that annually, and at the end of 7 years, you would get that money back. Same thing with the C bond, only it's $50,000 for 5 years, and it's 4%. So we've been working with several different foundations, and in fact, we had our first closing deal by In Spirit Foundation this week, who have purchased $250,000 in the C bond, so they will be investing with us for 5 years, and will get a 4% return annually. The thing about those, if we just go back 1 second, Griffin, thank you. The thing about these bonds also is that the reason that we have them at different years is because as an organization, you need to be able to service the interest payments on these bonds, right? So you need to make sure you can stagger them. So whether it's paying the interest or the capital back, that you know in year 3, you can pay the capital back to all those who bought a D bond. And you can pay the capital back to the B bond in 7 years. So you want to stagger that so you can manage those payments. Also, in those years, the other thing that happens is that people might want to repurchase the bonds because it's going well. So I have 3 years. Well, I don't need that $1,000 back. I'll reinvest it and go for another 3 years. So you have an opportunity to work with individuals and organizations to see if they want to reinvest. That. So it gives us a way of staggering and providing the best for everyone. So how do you get started with with our project home? You go to www.sketch.ca/projecthome. And if you go into that site, you would see that it's got this front page, a nice little video going on there, and then you would go and click in invest in bonds. And then scroll down a bit and you would sign up here to get information. You are not committing to anything by doing this. I'm encouraging people to just go through the process. What will happen is that we'll have your information, and then we would follow up with you with an email, and we'll follow up. Now we're following up individually with phone calls. So we have several people in what we call the pipe drive right now. And so we're now following up with individual phone calls and starting to sell the bonds. So you can see the bonds are starting to be quite successful. So we encourage people to join now. But if you have any other questions or information that you need directly, this is my contact. I'm so happy to speak with you. Have a Zoom meeting individually if that's what you need and have any questions. But essentially, this is our aim, is to be able to have an opportunity to bring people together, especially when we need it now the most, is about building a sense of security and a sense of sustainability for individuals who don't have the kind of access, you know, that we have. We are very fortunate, or I am fortunate enough to have a home that I can be figuring these days out with, but we know we're in contact right now with many who this is just affirming the need to have that space available. And it's an opportunity for people to feel a part of that, be part of Project Home, and you can be part of making that happen. So that is our story. So what I would like to do, it's 1:53, is just open it up and take a look at some of the questions. I'm just going to stop sharing, although you'll be able to see any of the slides if we need to. But if people have any specific questions that they would like to ask, I would welcome them now. So Griffin's saying, what are you saying?
You can unmute.
Oh, you can unmute now as well. So please unmute and yes, ask directly. There's one question here. It says, is there a deadline to buy community bonds? So thank you for that question. Yes, we have opened them up now. We will have, the bonds will be available until June 30th, but they will go quickly. So because right now, if people have funds, it's going to be a very appealing opportunity for folks. So, but we will have, until we sell them out, they'll be available until June 30th. Okay. So do we have any other questions that people wanted to ask? Why can't, why give to the bond, why give to the community bonds versus any other? As we said, a lot of the interest rates in the Canada bonds, as you saw, is very low now compared to what we're able to offer, and we're able to offer that because we've done, we've done the work to know that's what we can support. So we are able to support at that level, and we hope that that will be of interest to people. And I think we just want to make it possible to be able to not only, as we said, purchase the space, but that we're using the bonds as an opportunity to engage with people and make them part of this story come true.
Hi, Rudy. It's Nadine. Can I ask a question?
Of course, please.
Thanks. That was a great presentation. It's a question slightly off to the side from the bonds conversation.
Okay.
Obviously, you guys have had to physically shut your space. What's going on with your programming in this COVID time? Are you able to provide any virtual programming support, or are you just going to hold off until you know you can open again?
Very good question. Thanks, Nadine. We are providing programming. This happened, of course, for everyone very fast. However, we were in a slightly fortunate time where our programs were mid-season, because we have the winter season the winter program had ended, and we had 2 weeks before the spring program would start. So we've used that time to pivot the programming to be able to offer programming online. But we're also talking this week, had several conversations. Thankfully, I think a lot of, including the Toronto Foundation, are really looking at ways of responding to COVID to provide emergency support. So we are looking at doing several things. One is not only just the online work, but we need to make sure that the young people we're working with have access to the tools they need in order to do that. So do people have computers? Do they have phones? Some way that they can engage with us. Who's in the shelter system that we can get equipment to or access to? Can we do an art drive? We thought of doing, the way you can order your your food now and have it delivered. We want to do, you know, art supply orders, and then we'll put those together and we'll deliver them. Because we're part of an essential service in that way, working with folks that we're able to then organize around that and get some supports out to people. Inside of those packages would include food, because people are used to coming to Sketch and getting 2 meals a day. So we want to make sure that part of that is providing food care, food security. We also are working with young people who've been employed with Sketch. We've been organizing to work with a number of them to get on some of the programs that are available, because program is suspended inside the space. We won't have program to deliver in the same way with them. So, but we want to make sure that they have some money in their pocket. So we're working to move them onto the SERB program. And so there's a lot of work happening there. So actually we're probably just as busy as ever. And certainly our online mentorship, we need to make sure we're reaching out to partners to figure out how to get access to like Zoom for everybody, and be able to access some of these tools, so that we can make sure that the real critical part is the mentorship, and then the arts engagement, because right now the isolation will have such an impact if we don't keep people engaged long term. That can have some real detriment to their being. And we know that for us, you know, art making is part of that healing. It's the connection is critical as part of that. So those are our main goals, is to get supplies out to people, see what they need, or, you know, and then get it to them, and we'll run online programming to the extent that we can.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. What other organizations have used community bonds to purchase? Good question. So we're working with Tapestry Community Capital, as I said, and they've done some incredible work with places like the Center for Social Innovation, Solar Share, and many others. We're a bit unique in the story, though, I think, in that our story is about buying a space for a specific social need in terms of people who wouldn't have access to the space otherwise. So, but they've worked with many others, and they've been very successful. In fact, they were the ones who determined that there's about a 70% to 77% return rate on the purchase of the bonds. So we really depend on them to help guide us through this process. And also, they are managing the bonds. Sketch is not in the business of managing the bonds, so they have all the back end infrastructure to support it. So once we have the bonds, people interested in the bonds, then we work through their back end system, and then we're able to connect with you through that. So they're excellent to work with. Great people. Are there any other? Oh, I have a side question here. Okay, yeah. So so it's 2 o'clock, and we said we would keep you. Are there any immediate questions anybody wants to ask? I would encourage you to email me. It's just rudy@sketch.ca, or give me a call, 416-803-5428. I'd love your feedback, or if you know people who might be interested. And right, we will follow up with the recording and the slideshow in case there are people you want to share it with. And yeah, we'd love to hear from people. So anyone who wants to reach out, please do. Thank you for joining me on this. We are very new at it. So you were my first group of individuals, and I appreciate the generosity of your time and questions. So I look forward to hearing from each and every one of you. Okay, be well in these days. Take care of each other, and we'll see you on and off throughout, and then perhaps at the other end, people will come for a tour, and we'll be able to meet face to face. All right, take care. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.